Fantastic. I think we'll kick it off then. We've got a nice little audience. We're all ready to go. So hello. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Stella de Cos. I'm an Arrernte woman and I'm the Director of Community and Customer Experience. And I'm so pleased to be hosting this panel with these amazing First Nation business leaders. The stories that they will share about their organisations and their own experience will be pretty inspirational, and we're really looking forward to be able to sharing and showcasing partnerships and helping our audience see how important it is to create these relationships. I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands in which we are all meeting and living. I'm here on beautiful Ngunnawal country in Canberra. I pay my respects to all elders past, present and to emerging leaders, not just on the country in which my feet are planted and on the country of which my ancestors and family are, but for all the countries and nations across this beautiful land. I pay my respect to our traditional owners as the custodians of our land, as they grow it, they flourish, they nurture it, and they prepare it for my children and for generations to come. So kicking off today, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm so excited to welcome you all and have you join us for this panel. This week's pretty important and pretty special. So not just Indigenous Business Month, but I did want to kick off and acknowledge a really important anniversary that is actually today for communities across Australia, particularly for Central Australia. Today, we acknowledge that it's an important anniversary for the return of Uluru and the Karajuda National Park to Arrernte people. This happened on the 26th of October in 1985, and the federal government returned the lands to the rightful owners as they should. As a desert woman, I connect and I understand the importance of this handback, the roots and the foundations that it creates for our communities. And we know that our country is the basis from which all of our strength and nourishment is drawn. For the Arrernte people, they did express before the park was handed back their grave concerns for mining and farming and tourism and the ruining of their land. And in their eyes, it's always remained their land, even when they felt that it had been taken and been dispossessed from them as well. And it's always remained important place for their ancestors, their spirits, for the rainbow serpent and for the gifts that they give their family and their generations to come. The park is actually jointly now managed by the Arrernte people and the Australian Parks and Wildlife Services. And in this connection, they have an assurance that the park will be respected and the natural cultural values will last. And in its own form, this is a partnership for them as well. So we'll take a moment, we'd like everyone just to take a moment and have a think about the land where you are and where you are connected, and perhaps what you draw from this land and what it does for the traditional owners and families there as well. So today we're talking about the power in partnerships, and I'm pleased to welcome and share the thoughts of our panels. And today's session, pleased to share and welcome the panel. And today's session we are sharing more broadly and we're recording. And we'd like for you to share the session and our speakers. And there's a few social media hashtags that you can use. So if you feel free to tag IBA, any of our participants, and use the hashtag Powerful in Partnerships, as well as hashtag Indigenous Biz Month and Indigenous Biz Australia. This month we are celebrating Indigenous Business Month, and the theme for 2022 is Actions Today and Impact Tomorrow. The impacts of partnership is really important, and co-design for developing programs to assist in achieving economic empowerment for First Nations people is what IBA do. It's what we're actually all about. We work in partnership with a number of providers, and these providers help us broaden our reach. And we support home ownership, access to business support services, and actually wealth creation through equity and investments. And we know our partnerships make us better as an organisation as well. Our partnerships grow opportunities and create thought and leadership, and it enables economic and empowerment and to contribute to the changing narrative of our First Nations people across Australia. At the start of this month at IBA, we released our 21-22 impact report. And we had the pleasure of having Minister Burney join us there and a panel of our customers that came from a range of our programs, and they shared their stories and their success and their achievements. The Minister at our launch, she actually made the comment, and it's really important and it actually resonated with us. It's the little things that we can do today which can make a whole world of difference to the communities we live in. And sometimes the feat that we're trying to achieve can feel so much greater than us. But comments like what the Minister made actually just shows a little bit of reflection, actually makes great impact as well. So let's get started and we'll hear from our panel. So welcome to our panellists. Thank you for joining us. For our audience, we've actually shared their full bios with you in a link prior to the start of this connection, but I will introduce them and I'll just give you a quick highlight and focus of who they are. So we are joined by Mundanara Bayles. So Mundanara's cultural connection is to the Wonnarua and Bundjalung people on her mum's side, and to the Birigaba and Gungaloo on her father's side. And Mundanara is the co-founder of BlackCard, which is a consultancy firm that provides cultural capability training and services that enable the corporate world and other organisations to work effectively with our communities. In 2020, Mundanara established a Black Magic Woman podcast, and in 2021, IBA commenced our partnership with Mundanara to share our customers' stories and success through her series. Also joining us is Dr. Ash Francisco. So Ash is a proud Rotary woman. She has a drive for learning, and she's achieved a Bachelor in Media and Comms and a Master's in Applied Cultural Analysis. This experience that Ash has drawn on has led her to establish her drive for effective research. And in 2021, Ash was awarded with a doctorate for her research and agenda focusing on Indigenous future of work. Ash is an integral member of the Dilin Duwa Centre for Indigenous Leadership, and she manages their partnerships across Australia. We're also joined by Phil Usher. So Phil's a Rotary man, born and raised on Gomeroi country, and is the CEO of Australia's national leading agency to support organisation that supports financial wellbeing for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Phil is regularly called upon by media as a spokesperson for business, finance and culture, and has been featured on ABC Breakfast TV, the Sydney Morning Herald, Smart Company and Money Management magazine, including the Financial Standards. IBA has fostered our partnership with First Nations foundations to support their mission, which improves financial literacy amongst our First Nations people. I'll also just do, thanks Phil, a quick acknowledgement. So Scott McCartney, CEO of Kinaway, Aboriginal Chambers of Commerce, was also supposed to join us today. Unfortunately, he is unable to. He has made an incredible growth achievement with Kinaway in the last 2 years, and we were hoping to share that story. So I do acknowledge his leadership and the efforts that the Chamber provides in supporting its members through economic empowerment. And I encourage everyone to hop online and have a look at Kinaway, have a look at their media and socials. They share some amazing stories, and they've had an incredible amount of growth over the last couple of years. So kicking off, we thought we'd just start talking about and having a conversation about how we grow and how we make stories happen. And I thought, Mundanara, we'd kick off with you. And we know you started Black Magic Woman podcast in 2020, and you've shared with us that your vision was to stay connected during a really complex time and to share stories. And through our partnership, we saw the significant opportunity to connect our customers and share their success. And this has spanned, and we've seen this happen significantly over the last 12 months. You've grown through your success as well, and we've seen BlackCard grow through its presence as well. And we now see you on Virgin Air. So I have to say, last Virgin flight was pretty excited to tune into podcasts, screenshots and shared them on socials. But tell us, how did you make that happen?
Well, first and foremost, in my father's language, we say Wadamuli. It's a Birigaba word for greetings, and my mother's language is the Gringai language in the Hunter Valley. And my mother was a Wonnarua Bundjalung woman. So I just want to say hello to you all, and it's so lovely to be part of the panel with some amazing people Phil and Ash, who I've know of and get to connect with. And hopefully I get on my podcast. So I'll be in touch. Stella, I had you on my podcast, right? And I just want to say really quickly that I have been yarning with you. We've met, we've had meetings, we've done BlackCard training at IBA. We know each other. But until I had you on the podcast, that's when I really felt like actually I didn't know much about you at all. So starting a podcast gave me an opportunity to connect with people that I already know, but didn't know on a deeper level. It's more like on a, professional level, surface level, business interactions. So Black Magic Woman for me was an opportunity to connect with people that I already know and then to connect with people that I know of, but I would love to know more. So yeah, pretty deadly to start a podcast to just kind of hear people's stories. But in terms of getting onto Virgin, well, that was really random. I have never gone out to the market and said, hey, I've got a podcast or, done kind of any market or promoting the podcast to, emailing people, have a listen to this. I know a lot of podcasters that do that, and that's great, but I just haven't had the time. The podcast is like 10% of my time and 90% is BlackCard, and BlackCard has funded the whole operations and production and employing a producer full time for a podcast. So I would say that, yeah, I was very lucky that I got a random email. We would love to have you as part of Virgin's in-flight entertainment. You've got so many episodes. Who do you recommend? And can we do a pilot for 3 months? So to be honest with you, I started to think after that, maybe I should actually be a bit more proactive and start getting the podcast out there to wider audiences. But yeah, I've never thought of actually ever hitting up an airline to get our stories, to the world. So that's pretty deadly. But yeah, I've learnt now that people are listening. It's been trending on Virgin. People are screenshotting that the podcast is trending. I want to be able to actually take Black Magic Woman to a whole different level and then go back to people like Virgin and say, hey, we've got 10 podcasters. Would you take some of these for the next 3 months? If you've had enough of Black Magic Woman, well, how about trying this podcaster or this podcaster? So yeah, this kind of partnership now has made me start to realize that the world, especially here in Australia, they're ready to hear our stories.
Absolutely. And that growth, because I know it happened quite quickly for you as well. So you got your message and then sort of within a matter of, I think like a month or so or more, you were on. And that expansion and taking that voice out there has just been so important. It shows you clearly what's possible for the future, I guess, and that growth and expansion for BlackCard and Black Magic Woman. In maintaining that theme as well, and I guess this probably feeds into having a chat to Phil as well. So Phil, your work at First Nation Foundation has really included the digital transformation of how we look at financial literacy and actually taking financial literacy and the conversation out into communities and into its digital and virtual form. Since the time that you've been at First Nations Foundation, you've launched Tomorrow Money and it continues to grow. We're keen to hear about how you're using partnerships to expand the goals and the financial wellbeing of our mob.
Yeah, thanks, Stella, and hey, everyone. And just got to say how deadly the women are on this panel. We've got Mundanara here on Virgin, and your dad, what he's done for community as well is massive. Was that Dr. Ash? Was that 3 degrees he got in there? Jeez, I'd put that on I'd put it everywhere. Every time I go to a flight, I'd have Doctor on there. I'd change your name to Doctor for sure. Doing that, you don't get that every day. That's madness. But yeah, the foundation focus on that financial prosperity for community, and for me, I'm a business nerd. I did business studies in year 11 and 12, and I just loved it. So I just read it in my spare time, and partnerships was the thing that I learned about every successful company. The way that they start, they just launch with partnerships. So what that looks like for us, and partnerships can be a number of different things, right? It could be financial, it could be in kind, like a number of our partners let us use their office space, whether it's for board meetings or promo or staff to work from or anything like that. But for our real impact, we go to where our audience is. So we've partnered with an organisation like BHP, for example, who've got 2,500 Aboriginal staff members, and some of these fellas are on decent money out in the mines. So for us, that partnership makes sense, right? Like me trying to go out and reach 2,500 Aboriginal people across, WA and South Australia, going to take a real long time and be really expensive. But if we go to that one person, have that one conversation, but we hit 2,500, of our customer base straight away, then that's just going to let us leverage. So we're looking for partnerships like that, and you fellows are IBA, fit that realm as well with your customers that own the homes and what that looks like to get homeowner ready, and then once you're actually in the home and all the expenses that go with that. So for us, partnerships is everything behind the growth of the business. And any business owner looking now, just think where your customers are, who has them, and what some of those mutual partnerships you can have to leverage and get in front of them.
That's such a good, that growth and that focus, Bill, that you're talking about is so important, because often we think about, and particularly because its impact on the ground, we think about partnerships through service delivery, but not activating strategic partnerships to say, how can I expand what I've got to go further? And for you as an independent, like Indigenous organisation and your board and your structure, you're still growing. You obviously have to manage your finite resources as well. So to activate those big partnerships and to expand that reach, and particularly when you're looking at the different segments, is really strategic and really quite sophisticated as well. It's an excellent model to focus on as well.
Yeah, I just find what the best people in the business are doing and then kind of add my own flavour on top of that. And look at a company like Coca-Cola. There's no Coca-Cola shop that you just wander into and get a drink. They got massive partnerships with Woolworths and McDonald's and the cinemas, and so they just have that one conversation and they get millions of customers. So I want to try and replicate that with how we approach business.
It's a really sophisticated approach. I know in thinking about that broader regional approach, Ash, Dilin and Duwa have just launched the business series as well, and you've wrapped up your most recent series on countries, thinking about that expansion as well, and you're in Alice Springs. We're keen to hear about also like how you are using those relationships, or what do you think, how do you strategically use those relationships to create impact on country and what you're doing in that space? And how do you create those relationships on country?
Well, thanks, Stella, and hi to everyone. I'm Ash Francisco, proud Wiradjuri woman, and calling in from very rainy Tamarong country in central regional Victoria. So we've just got back from doing the regional series in Mbantu, Alice Springs, and in terms of partnerships, the reality is we could never have done anything like that without having partnerships. Dilin Duwa is quite a new centre, and we've been brought together. Different kind of partnerships have developed where the centre is at over all of its lifetime. So from the conception of what Dilin Duwa as a centre, what its role was within the ecosystem, that was developed through partnerships with Mara alumni and Mara's network, a program we've been running for 10 years. So hypercritical for the success of any program, particularly if you're going into a local space that's new. Our methodology for that and our cultural responsibility is to ensure that we work with local people on the ground, that we have those conversations before anything gets set in stone, that it's really the ownership lies within place. And our unique value proposition is our alumni, and what we've been able to do with the Mara program and being able to connect that into new partnerships on the ground in new areas, and particularly in regional Australia. I know, as we all know, sometimes regional is a little bit left behind at times, and as I am a business owner as well as working with Dilin Duwa, and I know that it can be hard to be in a regional space, particularly compared to being in an urban. So, and even that is all about the partnerships and creating networks across the country to strengthen the ecosystem and work with each other.
Yeah. And Ash, with that, especially when you're focusing on establishing those relationships on country, there's obviously the cultural element of being inclusive and safe, and that co-design and conversation as well. And our nations and our country are so vast and broad and so different. Alice Springs, and that's it's their my country. So for my family is there, my connection and my feet stand in that place as well. But, you know, in those considerations and as a Rotary woman, you know, how did you feel about embracing that space and when you're thinking about the culture of the space that you were creating for the series as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's always important to know your place, you know, and to know, and also to acknowledge that all business is done on country, whether it, you know, like I'm on country right now, it might not be my country, but, you know, it's there, you know, people, yeah. So business is all around Australia and yeah, a critical part. It's an interesting space, I think, particularly after coming from COVID, because a lot of conversations and partnerships have been developed virtually, you know, over 2 years as well. Of course, there's old connections that feed in, but I think for us, it was really about having the conversations first and foremost. We spoke to traditional owners. We went to Laratipa to discuss whether or not this might be something that was something that Bantua would like and embrace. We were invited. A critical part is that we were invited there. And that is a major premise for any work that we do in any space. You know, we are a multi-country team, can we say?
Yeah.
From all across Australia. And so, you know, sometimes there may be opportunity that we can be doing things that are more on country. And then, you know, so I think it's all about respect, knowing your place, making sure that you have conversations on the ground so that you know the correct protocol for that area and to ensure that you follow it and honour that, and to ensure that you continue that partnership beyond what happens within that's, you know, initial conversations, but then the programs and into the future, that, you know, it's a sustained relationship, it's a sustained partnership. And that in turn, that respect and that honouring of place is also respected.
So important. Thanks, Ash. And you know, you make the comment, we actually do business on all country as well. One of the things that we're going to have a yarn to Scott about, and I encourage everyone to have a think about again, look at Kinaway's. He's grown Kinaway Chambers of Commerce, and we talk about our Aboriginal way of doing business and our culture and our principles, and then we talk about a Western way of doing business and how complex it is for our businesses to adjust into that Western way of thinking, and particularly when you're thinking about finance and access to capital as well. Mundanara, with Black Magic Woman podcast, I mean, culture, it's critical. Storytelling is actually part of our culture, and you actually focus on that through the podcasts as well. So you've got to, I'll say it here, I am the most nervous presenter, I will say anywhere, and you made me feel so comfortable on your podcast. But you've got this new unique gift for creating a safe space for us and all mob, you know, when we're yarning to you as well. And it's a space where we can actually talk about our achievements and celebrate success. And we often talk about celebrating success as well. And so it actually, having that safe space makes it possible for us to even recognise, not just talk about it, but recognise, hey, we've done this. And I love listening to, I mean, I think I've listened to all of the podcasts, specific focus and excitement on our guests as well, because we've got amazing home customers that have just shared a story, and, you know, they've had that aha moment going, actually, I did this, and I've done this for my family, and I'm actually going to do that for next generations as well. But from your 100 episodes or 100 plus episodes now that you've created, you've developed partnerships and you've developed relationships, and it's helped expand your business opportunities for storytelling. Tell us how you're going to continue to do that and grow.
Sure. Well, thanks to IBA for seeing Black Magic Woman as a vehicle to be able to tell the stories of your customers to the wider community and inspire our mob in particular about what's possible. Pick up the phone, have a yarn, send an email, get on the website. Just that's happening, because people are ringing me all the time. And Stella, you know this. They don't get a call back. Boom, I get onto Stella, like, I'm helping now. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of helping with business support and advice, but it's not my strengths. I am doing my MBA through Monash, which led now to the second partnership. So IBA, you know, having the opportunity to tell stories without a script. That's so important. People understand that IBA haven't given me a script. They've given me a list of people and have said, we love your formula. We love your format. Just do what you do. So that relationship, the synergy is there. They want me to tell stories of their customers, and I'm doing it how I do it, and I'm not changing what I do for the client, right? So that's really important. In terms of the next partnership, Monash University basically heard this partnership and went, why don't we use our marketing dollars, not our RAP budget or our Indigenous funding, why don't we use our marketing budget to promote the MBA course, which is the MBA in Indigenous Business Leadership. So I'm part of the first cohort to go through that MBA program. And it just made sense that that program is about empowering First Nations people in business. I'm part of the cohort. I have a podcast, and they're reinvesting money back into an Aboriginal business. So it was a win-win for everyone. So that, to me, those partnerships are important. I'm able to do what I do without kind of going, oh, it's not really what I do, but I'll do it anyways, or that doesn't sit within my genre or within our format. So you've got to find partnerships that work for both people, not, oh, okay, I'll just do it for now. Doesn't feel right, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm very lucky that I've got my business BlackCard to fall back on. So I'm employed by BlackCard. My producer's employed by BlackCard. Another person that manages the contracts, the partnerships, and the money is employed by BlackCard. So, you know, the success of Black Magic Woman is not just me. There's a few other people behind it. But I also have qualifications in media. That's why I would say, you know, I'm trained. I'm not raw. I didn't just learn how to podcast or interview yesterday. I used to deliver Cert 3 and 4 in media. I've grown up in a family that built radio stations in Sydney and here in Brisbane. So I've been in media my whole life. So it comes natural for me to be behind a microphone. It does not come natural for me to be on YouTube. I have not watched a YouTube episode. I don't like seeing myself on camera. And I left radio about 15, 17 years ago because I don't like my husky, deep voice. So when I walk into a room and I engage with people, I have to say that I am not unwell. Because of my voice, it's so husky and deep. People think that I might be a bit sick. I'm bouncing back from COVID. So anyways, yeah, my voice, it's taken a long time for me to get used to hearing myself and to kind of see that I do have something that's special. I have the ability to connect with people from all walks of life, and those stories is what I want to draw out of them. In terms of now taking it to the next level, through IBA, I'm now a customer of IBA. I'm going through their Business Accelerator program to actually develop a business model for a podcast, which is my side hobby, which is now taking a lot of my time. That business model will become a template for other podcasters. So First Nations foundations, Phil, you might come to me and say, Mundanara, love your podcast. What did you do? How did you do it? How did you get it going? Did you get any funding? All of that, I'll be able to tell a lot of our mob in a package, right? I'll be able to package it up and give it to people, or figure out some kind of business kind of model around how do I create what I've created and scale it. That doesn't impact on what I do at BlackCard, but adds value to what I do at BlackCard. I must say that my producer is also a qualified sound engineer. He did audio engineering. He has a bachelor's in that. So like, it sounds amazing because I've got someone like him behind the scenes that's always said to me that he, as a non-Indigenous person, he does not want me to acknowledge him in the podcast. You know, this podcast has been produced by Clint Curtis. He doesn't want any acknowledgement, but you know what? It's been 2 years, 100 episodes, and soon you're going to hear me acknowledge my producer. That's, to me, that's really deadly. The partnership that I have with a non-Indigenous person, we've come together. He was employed by my dad at the radio station. He's had 7 years of working in an Aboriginal organisation and has the skills and qualifications, and that partnership has been amazing. But yeah, I was going to say BlackCard definitely has supported Black Magic Woman. Didn't start with no money, no resources. I had all of that there. And now IBA is backing me in terms of what does a business model look like for a podcast.
Yeah.
So big things are on the horizon, Stella.
It's very exciting. I have to say I'm a little bit privy to that, so I'm pretty excited. But what you're doing is empowering and creating change and growth. So in effect, changing the narrative of what resources we have and how we support other businesses and our networks as well. And I like how you talked about Clint, and you highlighted the importance of that partnership as a non-Indigenous person as well. So at IBA, we do have partnerships with non-Indigenous organisations and some of the banking sector. And we look for, and it is about like-minded values, and it's about creating greater impact. And often we're very protective of change, and we feel like we need to own change as we do. And we are the drivers of our own vehicle for change as well. We need to make those decisions, and we are making those decisions more. But we have these great partners that are like-minded, that have resources and skills that they want to contribute to our level of change and empowering us to do that. And it's important to, and it's great to acknowledge them as well. We are not, so we are a small group, we are strong and we are mighty, but we need the support of the nation to create the change and to move forward as well. We've got lots to repair from our history as it is, and we're absolutely doing that. But changing that narrative is really important. And I mean, we do that at IBA. We do it with every customer that comes to us and accesses a home loan or a business product. We're changing the narrative and that financial control and understanding and confidence in accessing and relationship with money as well. And I know, Phil, you do that as well as First Nations Foundation. So, you know, with your community work, you're changing the narrative and you're helping our mob think differently about money as well. I'm keen to understand, like, through what First Nation Foundation has done, and you're doing a lot in remote areas as well. I know Deadly Larisha's up north this week as well, so I've been watching her on Insta. She's with an amazing women's group up there. But like, how comfortable do you think our mob are now starting to feel about talking about money, and what changes have you seen in communities as well?
Yeah, well, the young one's been real impressive, eh? Some of the stuff Larisha tells me when she works with some of the girls in high school, we go there, we're like, all right, it's high school, don't want to be too complicated. We'll teach them maybe a bit about budgeting and savings. And then they learn that, and they reckon they want to learn more about superannuation and taxation and how to start your own business. And then like, how do we get in the share market and all this phenomenal stuff that you didn't know as 16, 17-year-old, and they're starting to ask these questions. So I think for the younger fellas and younger Aboriginal women, it's looking quite positive, those money conversations. Outside of that, what we do differently is we put culture first and foremost for everything. And we haven't done anything original for money management or budgeting or anything like that. No one has in the last 100 years. It's all the same kind of stuff, needs, wants, income, expenses, put that 60% towards the housing costs and save 10%. All that stuff's been done for 100 years. What we do is we allow fellas to go through a bit of a healing process first before we even talk about budgeting, because, as your sense of self-worth and attachment to money or acquiring money when, you've got not so long ago, your Nen and Pop placed on a mission and they were given rations of flour, sugar, tea, alcohol, tobacco. There's no money to manage. Got stolen wages where fellas are working and their money's held in trust by government to get it at a later date, and they didn't. Just recently, the cashless debit card is another form of that money being held and one will not being able to manage it. And then when we did get into the workforce, it was real basic kind of money where by the time you eat and pay rent, there was nothing to really manage. So we kind of talk about that and what your relationship is with money and that you can acquire money and build wealth and still be really connected to culture. You don't have to do one or the other, and you're not less of a Aboriginal person if you are starting to look after yourself financially and how to set those healthy relationships and boundaries with money. So before we even talk about any dollar figure or anything, we have those conversations and let people go through kind of a healing process. And then we can go forward and do the money budgeting stuff, because that's the easy part, right? The save, invest 10% a year, that's easy. Once we allow people to have that conversation, and particularly through Larisha's program with the women, and they just talk. They don't know each other, but they just talk and they're healing together and having those conversations. The rest of that part's really easy. So I think it's quite positive about us talking more about money, being comfortable with it. And then some of the questions these younger fellas are asking is just, really inspiring.
It's pretty inspirational. We've done a lot with youth as well in the conversation about business. And Mundanara had joined us in a forum a couple of years ago, and the innovative and the thought and the heart for maintaining culture and country, and the conversation of future and being at the top tier, highest expectations our young people have for themselves in being anywhere at any time that they want to be. And they're asking really innovative questions and thinking about the future as well. It's really exciting. Thinking about that, and you talk about healing, and healing is the core, I think, to all of our generational impact, and for us to grow confidence in the world and the future as well. We do that healing centralised in our families and in our own communities as well. And Ash, I know you've done lots of work in regional locations and in spaces where communities are consistently on a journey of healing and protection, but they're actually creating ecosystems that encase their community. And we talk about ecosystems from a business and economic development perspective, but these ecosystems actually are intrinsic to the health and well-being of communities as well. We're keen to hear a little bit from you, so your view, and when you've seen these ecosystems created in country, like what are some of the fundamental principles, if you're thinking about economic ecosystems, what are they created on, and what impact do you see that resonates through community?
Thanks, Stella. I think the main thing is local leadership and vision. It has to, I mean, we say it all the time, but we say it all the time because it is the truth. That, you know, things there has to be a vision for the future, a leadership to take you there. And of course, you know, I think networks is also, of course, really important, both through access to capital and access to growth, but then also through partnered business opportunities. So I think that's sort of, they're things that are required at, say, different parts of the journey for a regional ecosystem, I would say, but all from my observations. And, you know, we do a lot of work with different communities, particularly Yarrabah Leaders Forum up in Far North Queensland, who have shown amazing leadership in their 6-pillar community development approach. That is something that, you know, brings everyone together within that ecosystem, that they've got a mutual goal of which to work towards. And it's almost kind of a way to hold each other accountable to that initial vision and leadership. And so it's been an absolute honour to work within the 6th pillar of that community strategy, which is strong economy within the community. And yeah, so I think that they're the main sorts of things. Leadership and vision would be the takeaway.
I think we see greatest change and impact when we've got strong leadership, and when our mob recognise themselves as leaders as well. So often we don't, you don't, they don't. It's really complex because we're so committed to our family and our work and what we do, but we role model in different ways. You all role model in such amazing ways and are incredible leaders, you know, for our business sector as well in many levels. I know Yarrabah, because we've yarned about it before in that space as well, when we talk about those pillars and that ecosystem, whilst they focus on economic empowerment, which is so important, it absolutely feeds into the health of the sector. Like they look at health outcomes and education outcomes and employment, which is so critical. So you can see this inclusive community progression that they've created around them. It's so important and so critical.
Yeah, and highly encourage anyone to, you know, get in contact with the YLF about talking to them about their model or having a look at it in terms of, you know, how, you know, if that's something that obviously their call, but the idea of how you can interweave a 6-pillar strategy that does bring economic development into health outcomes, to education, you know, financial literacy. You know, it's a great example of how you can do it in a way that funders can see and understand, that, you know, other partners can understand where you're coming from. It's pretty critical.
Yeah, I might just quickly throw, so Mundanara, I know you've had a connection with Yarrabah previously before, which is, and I don't know if it's a partnership, but it's a, we talk about partnerships and strategic relationships. I mean, you hosted, we were just talking earlier on, actually, you hosted the Mara anniversary, so the Indigenous Business Masterclass. And I remember you talking about your connection to Yarrabah and the reconciliation of what they do there in that leadership form as well. Do you have any reflections on that ecosystem and strategic relationships in remote communities as well?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add that, my late father, Tiger Bayles, was amazing at building relationships with mob and people around the country. So I've been able to leverage off those relationships. I can walk into communities and introduce myself, follow proper protocol by building a relationship. Don't just turn up and, want to talk about business, but going in and building these relationships and then finding out that they've had an existing relationship with my dad makes it a lot more easier for me then, right? So when I first met the mayor of Yarrabah, he sat on a board, a Queensland government board with me called the Indigenous Business and Innovation Board that the Deadly Sister, Leanne Enoch, set up when she was the Minister of Business, Innovation, Tourism. So I met him on the board. And when I first met him, along with like 15 other black fellas, he'd said to me, "Are you Tiger's daughter?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, look, you've got to come to Yarrabah. Every time your dad came to Cairns, he would drive to Yarrabah, and I can even take you to the family that still live on the beach." And that's where he would go and camp. So the mayor opened the community to me. When I went there recently for the Indigenous tourism, the Australian Indigenous Tourism Conference was hosted in Cairns. He then texts me, he goes, "Are you here?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm coming over now." So he came over, grabbed me and Cassie, who runs our tourism business in Brisbane. We went over to Yarrabah for half a day, not even a plan, right? Spent half a day over there, and it was the best thing ever. I had this kind of intimate kind of a tour guide. Like I had a traditional owner and the mayor driving us around and showing us their country and introducing us to mob. This is Tiger's daughter. All of the old people that he introduced me to, this is Tiger's daughter. So those relationships, what my point is this. My point is that my dad has built these relationships, and I have a huge responsibility, right, to make sure that my children benefit from those relationships that have been built generations ago. So how we conduct ourselves on other people's country, doesn't matter what family you come from or what surname you have, or whether you grew up in community or you didn't grow up on country, we all need to remind ourselves that there are, like you said at the start, the protocols are different from community to different communities. I'm able to leverage the relationships that my dad has, and I'm always mindful of how I act, how I interact, who I'm talking to, how I talk to people. I'm always thinking about my dad, and I'm always thinking about my children. I want them to be able to walk into these communities and have the same kind of welcoming. "Oh, you're Mundanara's son," or "You're Mundanara's daughter." So, I think partnerships is really amazing. Partnerships are based on relationships. So build those relationships. Nearly every second day, the mayor messages me. Every second day. "How are you? What are you doing? Where are you today? Where are you in Sydney? I can see you on Facebook." So when you do build these relationships and you go into these communities, maintain those relationships. And then I was in Sydney talking to somebody, and I said, "You know what? I'd love to take this organisation, your executives, to a place like Yarrabah." Another group of executives that I'm talking to through BlackCard, I'm going to take over to Quandamooka country, onto North Stradbroke Island at the end of the month. I'm talking to traditional owners here on Kabi Kabi country about taking people to Cherbourg and do the ration shed tour. So partnerships and relationships are really important, because some of us are doing business with the biggest corporations in this country, and we've got the key to some of these communities, but we need to make sure that we're not just opening the gate and introducing them, but we make sure that they're the right people to come into our communities and do business with us. right? Because we might do more harm than good. We think we're doing the right thing by introducing people and building these networks and relationships. But if those organisations and those individuals aren't culturally capable, then they shouldn't be coming into our communities, full stop, because it will come back on us.
Absolutely. It's partnerships with purpose. Yep. It is about co-design and consultation. It is having our voice and seated at the table to work with those organisations as well. But while you're talking, Mundanara, and just reflecting on your dad, I mean, the theme this month and this year is action today, impact tomorrow. Your dad's actions then is the impact for you now, and what you do will be the impact for your children, which will tie really nicely into, and I won't do it yet, but I'm going to ask you all a key question about that, exactly what you're doing, because you're probably not thinking about it, what you're doing now or what your family has done before. You might not have that moment, that aha moment goes, actually, wow, you know, he did that or they did that. And it's so critical because it's part of all of our lives as well. Ash, I'm so glad we've still got you on. It's awesome. I've been watching it. And we know it's climate change, but it is also our ancestors directing where water needs to be. I honestly believe that as well. So, 90 cents. But just, I know I could stay and talk for hours, and I know we'll have to wrap up shortly, but I do wish, talking about that remote connection, I do want to just have a yarn to you, Phil, and I know because you're expanding more further, so I guess out into regional locations by physically being present, but also with the platform. Have you leveraged any partnerships, or are you leveraging partnerships to do that? And it's something that you touched on earlier, that strategic partnership to expand your reach.
Yeah, so what you fellas are talking about there is it's Aboriginal law, LORE, going through that process. Just because we're Aboriginal doesn't mean we can go into another community and say, these are programs we're going to run, and because it's worked over here, it's going to work there before. So one of the best outreach programs we've done is Big Super Day Out. And that's prior to my time, but what had happened is they go out to community, most of these regional remote areas. They take Centrelink, tax office, super funds, financial counsellors, and they go to community and help them find superannuation, like bring their balances together. They'd been to, I think it was 21 communities, and they've found $24 million in lost super for Aboriginal people and got it into one or two super accounts. That was underpinned by community partnerships. Yeah. For us to get fellas there to that day, because it was, you'd set up at 8, you'd be there till 6, and you'd have people come in from different areas. We couldn't just rock up with that concept ourselves and do that. We had to find the right community partners that, one, understood what our intentions were and what we wanted to do. Two, tell us the best times when we do it. Make us aware if there's any sorry business or the community's closing down, or wet seasons on, or just stuff that's happening, make sure it's effective, but also be on the ground and promoting it consistently. So, that money that we found, that's on the back of those community partnerships, and that's critical when you're going out into those remote areas, just going through that process, going there, talking to one person, having your first session and 2 or 3 people show up. And this is where the big corporations are saying, no, you failed. That's not working. You had 3 people show up. That's part of the process. Next time it's 5, the next time it's 15, and then next time you're just busy off your feet because everyone's going there to take advantage of the service. So just understanding that Aboriginal law that you've got to go through, and how prevalent that is in some of those remote locations.
It's so important. It's the conversation of truth-telling that we're having now. It's a narrative that we've always had, that our parents have had, our grandparents have had for generations, and it's what we're talking about now and bringing to the forefront as well. And a lot of government policy is underpinned by that now. When you talk about Commonwealth shared agreements, they are important and need to be informed by community and community partnerships. They need to determine how and when it's okay to go into community, and good partnerships, strong partnerships built on the right foundations, respect those values, and use those tools and those resources to create those relationships as well. And government is one element, and I guess First Nation Foundation as an Aboriginal organisation, is another key strategic player that does that as well. I'm really mindful of time. As I said, we can yarn forever. I did want to also throw to Ash. So importantly, I think it's important to acknowledge the the Melbourne Business School Indigenous Business Masterclass, the MARA. I know, Mundanara, your alumni. And Phil, I'm not sure if you've been through that program. We'll have to get you an application. We're fortunate enough to support that. And I mean, they've got an alumni now of more than sort of 120, I think, or 130. They've got a cohort in Melbourne this week that are doing their block. Last night, they celebrated the Indigenous Business Month Business Awards. So check all the socials, everyone out there. You can see some amazing businesses being celebrated as well. But and we should also say, I guess, Indigenous Business Month is founded by MARA alumni. So 3 amazing women, or 4 women, have been intrinsic in establishing this, and the business sector has grown and celebrated all Aboriginal businesses and communities as well. But can you tell us a bit about how important it is for partnerships to continue to grow that footprint? And MARA's been going to have 10th anniversary this year as well, which is huge. I think we're up to Gen 14, which is massive, Generation 14. I think, Mundanara, you were Gen 1 or 2? 3? Yeah, so it's huge. But through these partnerships, this program continues to grow. I'm keen to hear from you how that continues to happen.
Yeah, I mean, how deadly that we have Indigenous Business Month. Love it. It's I think the whole thing about IBM is to bring everyone together and showcase those partnerships and those visibilities, whether it's through Mob to the Ecosystem or through non-Indigenous partnerships, through corporate partnerships, and really create a space to this year's theme is Impact Today, Action Tomorrow, or Action Today, sorry, Impact Tomorrow. And I think that really speaks to partnerships as well. MARA could not have been going for 10 years without our fabulous partnerships. IBA has been with MARA from the start. And I think the focus is on the businesses. The more partnerships, the more sustainable partnerships you have, the more solid relationships you have, the better the outcomes for the Aboriginal businesses that participate in the program. And so that's always our drive, and our focus is to look, what other opportunities could we create? How could we utilize the vehicle of MARA being a 10-year program and its legacy to strengthen other organizations or groups that are doing things in different areas or bespoke programs, and looking to really share that resource and that knowledge with respect of other people's and organizational knowledge as well. And how can we meet together to, as I think you said at the start, to really just expand what we're doing further and amplify each other's actions, so that, we're strengthening the ecosystem and making it as straightforward as possible for Aboriginal businesses to excel in however they want to do that. And I think the solid partnerships and productive partnerships are really critical to that.
So important. I love how you use it, amplified. It's we should use that word more often, because the Indigenous business sector is amplified. It's grown. We've seen so much growth and independence and traction. It's been really inspirational. Even through COVID, we've seen this growth, this level of sustainability and this growth and innovation, where businesses have pivoted, and we've maintained, or the sector has maintained, this presence and voice in the Australian economy, which has just been so important as well. So I guess we're coming to the end. Last question for all 3 of you, and it's really important that I guess we hear from you and we get our audience to have a think about it as well. But I guess I'm keen to know, and I'll go around the grounds, what action are you doing today? What impact do you want to create for tomorrow? What's that lasting impact that you want to create? And I know a lot of people talk about legacy. We don't generally talk about legacy. We talk about impact and generational change. So I can see Mundanara's looking thoughtful, Ash is looking thoughtful, Phil's looking pretty cool and calm. So I'll start with Phil.
That's just how I look normally. I think for me, be really good if we're looking at the impact of the financial literacy training and education and Aboriginal businesses. If we have fellows that kind of don't need to be siloed in this educational stuff, where they'll have a business idea and they can raise capital, whether that's going to the bank and getting a business loan, because they understand how that works, but also the bank understands that cultural element as well. We're working in that area where we're doing some culture training for the financial service sector, so they understand Aboriginal people, how we perceive money and how we do business, rather than just going out there and telling Aboriginal people that, this is the way you got to play with, these corporates, and you got to do it this way. We're trying to do it in the middle. So, not have these silo places where they can just say, I want to raise money for my business. I want to do that, whether that's venture capital or go to angel investors or go to the bank or just start investing, and there's kind of no barriers. I think that's where we'd like to head, and just having that confidence and that self-confidence to do that, and that familiarity, because I think you asked some of our older generation, how many Aboriginal people did you know owned a home, invested in the stock market, owned a business even, and you gradually see that change, and the more that's kind of normalised, I think the bigger sort of impact we'll have into the future.
I love it. Making access to capital with confidence normal in the way of our future, thinking about money.
Great. Yeah, get that entitlement like some of these other followers have. They're just like, I've got a business, I'm going to raise $2.5 million from my private network of friends. We can do that.
Love it.
We've got to learn it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ash, your actions today for impact tomorrow.
Oh, thanks, Stella. Big question, of course. But I guess to note that Dilin Duwa is a Woiwurrung word from the Wurundjeri people that was gifted to us to encapsulate what the action that we do today, what the impact of that is tomorrow. And, it means everlasting flow, and recognition of that, everything we do is to honour our ancestors and to create pathways and opportunities for our young people. And so for me personally, with the work at Dilin Duwa, that is really focused around regional business support and looking at how we can connect regional businesses together. But then also, how can Dilin Duwa be in service to the regional business sector? How can we be the best that we can be for that ecosystem? And also, how can we be in service to our alumni? Through that alumni network, we have impact through their networks. And so anything that we can do to support alumni ultimately has effects on their communities and their families from them. So I think that's a really critical thing for us to, we really focus on our alumni and just how amazing they are, like Mundanara.
Yeah, really deadly, actually, very deadly. Thanks, Ash. And Mundanara, your actions today for impact tomorrow.
Well, look, I just want to say yesterday I interviewed Natasha Short from Kimberley Jigars, who's based on Mirrawong country, Kununurra. Now, Natasha talked about Liz Gillies. Well, she didn't talk about Liz Gillies. She talked about the Menzies Institute and funding this kind of pilot program to support the Kimberley community, which is a lot of people across a lot of country, the Kimberleys, to go into business and to build business acumen and skills and all of that. So Liz Gillies was my mentor, and I couldn't believe that I'm interviewing Natasha, hearing about the Menzies Institute, which then made me reflect about my Murra journey, which you'll hear on the IBA partnership series around strong women, strong business. So I wanted to give that a plug because my actions today is exactly that. Who would know about this amazing woman in the Kimberleys that's doing so much for her community? Most people wouldn't know who she is. Now she's got a spot on my podcast thanks to IBA. And we're not just promoting the Menzies Institute and IBA, but we're actually promoting the Aboriginal women in that community that would never promote themselves. So my podcast is my actions today. I want to keep amplifying the voices of our people and the stories, the resilience, the challenges, the successes, the achievements of our people, so that the 97% of the population can start to really respect who we are as First Nations peoples, what we've invented, what we've created, despite all of the odds against us, that we're still here. So that's my impact. I want to keep on doing my podcast and, keep training up more people at BlackCard to keep doing BlackCard while I keep on doing the podcast.
That's awesome. Thanks,
you.
Mundanara. That's cool. And I'm glad you mentioned Natasha as well, because I mean, we've had a fantastic partnership with her a couple of years ago, and Natasha put on the East and West Kimberley Women in Business Forum, and that reached over 120 amazing Aboriginal businesswomen that we don't realise are out on country and doing business their way, doing business in a Western way, creating impact for their family and children, and actually creating their own ecosystems as well. And often women that we might not necessarily see, they're not necessarily that visual because they're in their own space as well. So for our audience, I really encourage you through your networks and hop on social media through most of the pages. I know through Mundanara's page, I know the First Nation Foundation, through Dilin, Duwa, you'll see stories of alumni, of businesses, of organisations, of communities, and you can see the impact and change and the importance of relationships and empowering people and country as well. Thank you so much to our panellists. I always love to have a chat. As you all know, such fantastic connections. The themes that we have touched on, all that are important to you, are just so intrinsic to our culture. Storytelling, success, being strategic and confident, and showing up in this space as leaders and creating the right relationships as well. I thank our audience for joining us as well, and I really encourage you to think about what resources and what you can activate in your businesses and organisations to create a bigger impact. What's a good relationship or partnership for you? Can you work with Aboriginal businesses? Are you an Aboriginal business or organisation? There are so many connections to harness your resources to create a larger impact and a scalable impact as well. And I encourage you all to have a think about what your actions are today. What impact do you want to make for tomorrow, and to actively start to put that in place. Like our minister said, it only takes the small things that you do today to make change or to help us. So think about just those little things, connect with Aboriginal businesses, connect with our ecosystem and our networks, and let's work together as well. And just finally, don't forget, if you want to share this conversation, to tag IBA, tag BlackCard, Black Magic Woman Podcast, First Nation Foundation, the Dilin Duwa Centre for Leadership as well, hashtag Power in Partnerships, and hashtag Indigenous Business Month. And also, we've still got a few days left, so there's a couple of days this week. I know there's a big lunch coming up in Queensland by the Murray Chamber of Commerce. There's the Circle in Adelaide is holding an event next Monday. There's some activity in WA. So everybody hop online to Indigenous Business Month website and have a look what's on as well. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone.